Mike McAllister.
Mike McAllister joining us now. Mike, where do we go? Let's just start with your takeaways, I guess, from this Miami game, and what stood out to you from the game.
The biggest takeaway for me was that I was disappointed with how they started the game, down 9-0 the first few minutes in, and Red has to call a timeout. I was kind of half expecting them to come out and play with their hair on fire, right? Because they lost the game to Virginia Tech, a game they thought they should have won. The chatter about Red and the program and everything else is getting louder with each loss. And so I would have figured the competitive nature, the wanting to play for your coach, wanting to play for each other, et cetera, with, a good team coming in, that they would have been the team that came out, got off to a hot start, and then made Miami play catch up. And I thought that was their best chance to win it as well. And so to have them come out not that way, almost the opposite of that way, ultimately the rest of the game was essentially even, and that 9-0 start was something they were never able to overcome.
Yeah, and Steve and I were talking about this prior to the game. Nate George just comes out, and he's basically the reason they're up 9-0 because he gives them 2 turnovers immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, when your starting point guard is doing stuff like that, it's not great. I don't know exactly what the answer is, because then after that, when they got back into the game, he hit a couple of threes and helped them get, make a little run to get back into it. So there's, the good and the bad there. But I've been advocating for more JJ playing the point. I think there's different things you can do with the lineup behind that. And that's not saying that you're going to all of a sudden not start George or not play him at all, but I think especially matchup dependent, there's certain times when that might be more beneficial to the team as a whole. And George had some okay moments in that game, but turned it over too many times. And I thought defensively they really struggled. They forced more turnovers than they had in recent games, but they just were not contesting. And I think given how easily it seemed Miami was getting into the lane and getting to the rim, not having William Kyle out there for long stretches, especially in the second half, I think really hurt them as well.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you with, J.J. Moore at the 1. And I do wonder, as this season progresses, if you see that, if you see, Kine at the 2, J.J. at the 1, and Nate George on the bench a little bit more than we're used to seeing if he continues to turn it over like this. Because, 2 turnovers in the first 3 minutes, in a blink of an eye, you're down 9-0, and, you never lead the entire game. I brought up the point about the defense, Mike, and at the beginning of the season and on that Vegas trip, even though Donnie wasn't out there, we looked at it and we said, this team gets after you defensively, and when Donnie comes back, if they continue to play defense like this, they're going to be a difficult team to beat. Miami shot 61%, and we've seen during this rough stretch that the defense just hasn't been as suffocating as it was at the beginning of the season. What do you think has happened on that end of the floor?
I mean, to me, it doesn't necessarily seem like a schematic thing as much as it seems like an energy and enthusiasm thing. I mean, you can talk about whether or not you should switch from man to zone more often, and depending on the opponent you're playing against, and if Miami's getting in the lane, maybe you play zone to try to keep them away from doing that. But again, Miami's a good 3-point shooting team, so there's a double-edged sword there. You can discuss all of those things. Some of it does have to do with, personnel you have in the game at certain times, right? Kyan's not as good of a defender as someone like a Nate Kings, for example. Tyler Betsy has some limitations on the defensive end. But at the same time, those guys were playing early in the season, and it wasn't an issue like this. They were just really focusing and going all in on that end. And I don't know where that same level of energy and enthusiasm has been. I know Red has said it's hard to play that way for 40 minutes, but we saw them do that early in the season. The first 4 games of the year, the game against Houston, even against Kansas, first half against Iowa State before they ran out of gas, and then even against Tennessee, we saw that for large stretches of that game. So not exactly sure where it's gone, but it really hasn't been the same since that Tennessee game.
How about the play of Donnie of late? We saw when he came back, he obviously went on that run where he was fantastic. They won 3 games in a row, and I don't think it's a coincidence that, again, I'm not putting the blame on Donnie, but they need him to be good in order to beat teams, and he has not played well the last 3 games. He said afterwards he was a little too passive in this game. What do you make of, I guess, the way he's playing? Is it, everybody's focused on him right now, saying anybody but Donnie's going to beat us, and he's just not handling it well? What do you think has been the difference between that 3-game winning streak to this 3-game losing streak?
There's probably a little bit of everything in there. Donnie was playing so well, especially, the second half against Clemson and the next 2 games after that seeing him keep up that level of play for the rest of the season without any, to steal one of Red's terms, without any dips, it was probably unrealistic. But 3 games in a row is a little bit concerning. I agree with him in that I think, there were times in those games where he was a little bit passive. At the same time, sometimes, players just have little mini slumps where they're not hitting shots, right? Like, I don't recall from the last 3 games feeling like he was taking really bad shots. I thought a few times against Virginia Tech, they did a good job of giving him the ball kind of on the elbow in a one-on-one situation, and those are matchups you expect him to win more often than not. And sometimes the ball just isn't falling for you. So, if he can turn this around, get back to being aggressive and playing with that same level of energy that we saw the game against Pitt and the game against Georgia Tech, then I expect that he will bounce back and get back to that version of who Donnie Freeman is.
How about Tyler Betsy? That's been a topic on this show in terms of, like, if you're looking at switching up the lineup and changes you could make or breathe some life into it. Tyler Betsy is a guy who has shown when he's hitting shots, he could catch fire and he could certainly provide a spark. Do you foresee him maybe getting some added minutes as things move along here?
Possibly. I think it may depend on the type of team you're playing against. If you're playing against, for example, the next game that they're playing is at NC State. So NC State's a good offensive team. You're going to need to be able to score in order to keep pace with them. So is that a game that's more suited for a Tyler Betsy because his offensive prowess can help keep you in a game, as opposed to playing one of these bogged down, slow tempo defensive games where him being out there maybe is a bit more of a liability? There might be some matchup dependencies with Tyler Betsy, but there's no question that when he's been out there and he's getting shots, more than just 1 or 2 shots in a game, but they're actively looking to try to get him open shots, he's hit them in a very high clip and certainly gives them a big spark off the bench. So I'm all for giving him more of those opportunities.
All right, in terms of the coaching staff right now, and you've heard all the noise as well, I'm sure from the fan base and whatnot, and when you look at the job that they are doing, what is the biggest thing at the top of your list in terms of, I wish Red would do this differently moving forward? What's at the top of the list for you?
If I had to pick one thing, I guess it would be I kind of go back and forth between halftime adjustments and or some of the rotations, the substitution patterns. There's times where, we've talked about it in the past. JJ's playing well in the first few minutes of the game and then gets subbed out. Maybe a little bit more feel for, this guy's hot, I can't take him out. Or against a team that has a couple of bigs in foul trouble. So even though at that point you were planning on resting Donnie Freeman for a few minutes, maybe at that point you say, you know what, now is when we need to smell blood in the water and go after it. And without a couple of their big interior defenders out there, we're going to throw Donnie back out and let him try to go to work. Or, something like against Miami, their point guard is getting in the lane. We need to stop that somehow. Either that means go to zone, or, hey, Bryce Zephyr was really good at keeping their point guard out of the lane in the first half. Maybe we need to throw him back out there for a few minutes just to frustrate him. Little things like that. There's no resistance at the rim. We need to get William Kyle back out there to give us some. Stuff like that, I think, would be the biggest thing that could help this team moving forward.
How much do you think coaching plays into the fact that maybe this team comes out and is behind 9-0. Do you think is it up to a coach to have the guys ready?
Yeah, I think there's some blame on both sides of that, right? Like the players, I know Boeheim has always said that players are responsible for motivating themselves, that he's never been the, rah-rah type of coach before games to get players motivated to play, that they should be plenty motivated themselves. And I agree with that to some extent, but I also think if you're a coach and you're noticing that there's an issue with the starts of games, then you got to try to do something to help fix that. And maybe that is trying to come up with something to have them come out and playing with their hair on fire a little bit at the start of games. Hadn't been something that I had noticed previously as being an ongoing issue. It just, it happened against Miami and was something that they couldn't overcome. But, the players at the end of the day, you got to come out and play with pride, play with energy, play with enthusiasm for your teammates, for the team that you're representing on your jersey, for the name on the back of the jersey. Like, anytime you have an opportunity to come out and play, you're putting your own game on tape, whether it's for Syracuse to play you more for the rest of this season, whether it's for transferring to another place after this season, whether it's going pro, NBA, Europe, G League, whatever. Everything that you do is on tape and is part of that evaluation process, and you want to do everything you can to represent yourself well. And I think that coming out and playing hard and playing desperate is part of that, and I would like to see that from Syracuse in the next few games.
Yeah, it does seem like that's lacking right now, that urgency, the desperation that you would think they would feel right now. What were you going to say, Paul?
No, I'm torn on this. Like, I get it. It's just, if they're not ready, it's on somebody. Like, you shouldn't be allowed to come out with that energy level, more than once, right?
I mean, I think the blame falls on everybody. I think it's the coaches and I think it's the players, it's a collective thing. They're in this thing together, and 9-0 is not acceptable. And then, again, they're playing uphill the rest of the way, pulled even, but never pulled ahead in a game that they absolutely needed. So it would be nice to see them play with a little bit more urgency. The players take ownership of that. The coaches take ownership of it. I know everybody's trying, obviously, but there's, you use the word disconnect, and, Red didn't agree with that, but it does seem like there is a disconnect.
There's clearly a disconnect between the coaching staff and the players on certain things.
It seems like it. Mike, let's switch gears quickly while we have you. Did you hear our interview with Fran Brown last week?
I heard pieces of it. I didn't hear the entire thing.
Oh, I'm going to hang up on him.
I was going to ask you if anything stood out to you, but we'll put that aside because this kind of did come up in the interview, not this specific example, but I'm sure you heard Dabo go off about tampering. Yes, you heard this in the last few days. Listen, recruiting is your area of expertise. How much is this happening, and how big of a problem is it? And I guess most importantly, do you have any ideas on how we fix it? Dabo said, coaches got to call out other coaches. How big of a problem is it, and how do we fix it collectively?
It is a big problem, and I don't think it's limited to a player signing with someone during the portal window and then another school saying, hey, let's see if we can get you out of that so you can come here. This type of stuff happens during the season, right? So, and you look at the situation with Duke and Miami with Mensa, and Miami basically tampering to get him to enter the portal there by offering a ton of money from what it sounds like, or at least that's what Duke is alleging. It's a major problem. Now, how do you fix it? I think there has to be some level of accountability when coaches or agents or GMs, representatives, whoever it is that is communicating with agents of players or directly with players. There has to be a harsh enough punishment to stop it. And I don't know whether that means, major fines or taking away roster spots instead of, scholarships as it used to be. I don't know exactly what the answer is or what that punishment is, but maybe you limit how many players a certain team can take in the transfer portal if they're found to be tampering with things. Like, I'm not exactly sure where the answer is, but there has to be something harsh enough that it becomes a deterrent. And even still, you're going to find people that are going to try to skirt the rules. The other way you do it is when you have people signing these NIL contracts that there isn't a buyout to them. Now, I know that that's going to go against what a lot of people want because they want there to be freedom of movement and things that are fair to the players and you don't want to hold players hostage, so to speak. But there's got to be something that prevents this from happening. And when someone signs somewhere and they're in the portal noted as such and they're at that school starting to take classes and you have a head coach texting them saying, what's your buyout? Let's get you out of that, and we're going to offer you a ton more money to come here. There should be severe punishment for stuff like that because all of these coaches know that once a player is noted as signed inside the transfer portal, that means you are not supposed to be able to contact them. And so to have text messages where you see that contact happening, basically not caring about any of those rules, if you want to be serious and you want to try to limit this from continuing to happen or happening more so, there has to be a significant punishment to any coaches that are found, whatever process that is, a court hearing or whatever it is. There has to be a significant punishment so that it stops this from happening. Because if there isn't, there's essentially a slap on the wrist or less. It's going to happen more and more and more and more.
Mike, I want to get your perspective on one thing, too, before we let you go. Did you see our clip with Randolph Childress? I did, yeah. Okay. If he had asked you that question on the spot without you knowing it was coming, what would you have answered? Where does Syracuse rank basketball NIL?
I would have guessed middle of the pack of the ACC was kind of what my gut feeling is without having 10th? All the figures. 9th or 10th? Yeah, somewhere. I would say somewhere in the 7 to 10 range is kind of probably where I would guess.
Okay.
Yeah, middle of the pack.
Yeah, exactly I don't know exactly what the answer is, and I could be wrong, but that's at least my impression. And I think with the guys that they got this year, I don't think you could have gotten some of the players that they did out of the portal and retain JJ and Donnie without having enough money to not be at the very bottom of the league in the NIL.
It's clearly more than the two they had the year before.
Right.
Yeah. So. Yes, definitely.
All right, Mike. Great stuff as always. Thank you for coming on. We appreciate the time.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. That's Mike McAllister joining us here on the show. Before we hit our next timeout, let's get to the market as we bring on our good friend Lee from Lee Baldwin & Company. Lee, what's going on? How's the market as we kick off the new week?
We are kicking off the new week. Hello, guys. Stocks are higher today. It's led by the NASDAQ, up 146 points, or a little over 0.5% this morning. And our diamond has to be gold, which is at an all-time high now over, if you can believe it, guys, $5,000 per ounce.
Wow.
And then we have to have a dog if we have a diamond. Booz Allen just had all their government contracts canceled with the Treasury Department. I guess Donald Trump didn't like his tax returns being released or something of the sort. So that'll take a stock down 11%. And there you have it.
All right, Lee. As always, we appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
All right. All the diamonds, none of the dogs. Be sure to visit LeeBaldwin.com. Had some music playing in the background.
Yeah, it sounded like angels were coming down from heaven.
All right, let's hit our final timeout here in hour number one. We'll wrap up the first hour next on ESPN Radio.